Hi all, we have today Teresa Wu, software engineer at JP Morgan and Flutter and Dart Google developer expert. As you might know, you could type your questions to the chat and we'll be putting them to the view. And we have already 9 viewers watching and more will come. Thank you for joining in this time. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome everyone to join my talk today. I'm very pleased to be able to present this topic here with everyone. So it is some of this is my study through Flutter WebAssembly, and some of them is like I'm reading through the documentation at the moment. I think to use Flutter, the most popular and the most open public at the moment is for web. Sorry, is for mobile. But instead of talking about Flutter for mobile, because I'm sure you heard about the Flutter for mobile a lot, I'm going to introduce you to build a Flutter on web, but use WebAssembly instead of using HTML and JavaScript. And then we're slowly going to a bit of desktop as well. So you will be able to see Flutter on mobile and web and desktop. And for those who are not so familiar with building web applications, I will start with introducing some of the web technology as an overview. So you have some bit of background information before we start. And I will slowly introduce you to desktop application as well. So let's begin. Right. So as I was saying, today we talk about web technology as overview and slowly roll into what is WebAssembly and how we use WebAssembly in Flutter. And in the end, well, I will also talk about how we build and ship applications on desktop using Flutter. Hope you're enjoying it. So yeah, thanks for joining my talk today as well. Okay, let's begin with web, right? There are different ways you can build a web application. And probably the most popular one at the moment is called SPA in short, or single page application. What does this mean, right? So in old time, traditionally, the web page requests a server to send back HTML page to the client, the entire HTML page. So if you were like me, building web application or using web like in 10, 15 years ago, to load a web page, it's actually really slow because I need to ask server to give me the entire HTML page, and to refresh it, it takes a lot of time. So this now slowly developed into this single page application, very similar comparing to how we build mobile applications. We basically ask the server to send us JSON data, right, or some data in other format, but mostly JSON, for example, or image, and we render it on our web application. So instead of speed, it's a lot faster, has a better user experience, simplify the process, and you can cache things locally as well. So your web page looks more attractive. But on the other side, it has issues with cross-site scraping. What is cross-site scraping? We will talk about this in the later page. You might have some issue with memory leak in JavaScript, but it's due to the language, right? And it's heavier in terms of framework, but it's actually fine. Most of the browsers can handle this nowadays. And again, as in theory, it's not SEO optimized. Again, we have other tools, framework, technology to overcome this issue as for today. So now let's talk about what is cross-site scraping. So if you came from the web background, you might are very familiar with this word, but in case you are not so familiar with web, right? As you can see in the diagram, it's about attacker pretending to be a real general user and asking actually the victim to send or to click on your web page. This is because when a browser parses HTML, it just continue reading until it is the end of the script. Doesn't matter what content it is inside this script. So it will read. The script here might be injected into a trusted web application via user input. So you might be a user, you click something, you put something, and you are giving your information away for an attacker that you don't actually know. So for example, someone can send you a link, ask you to click it, and then your private data is sent to the attacker instead of to the trusted website or the web server. So how do we prevent this, right? As programmer on our side, we should never trust just user input. I mean, we trust our user, but we don't trust the input because we don't know who actually sent it. We need to validate all the input data and use content security policy as well. And we should also think about how we encode the output at the same time. So this is on a very high-level view of what is cross-site scraping. So if we move on from single-page application for web, there's another way to build a web application, and you might actually heard of it, PWA. What's PWA? It's called the Progressive Web Application. It's built on technology like JavaScript, HTML, CSS. But in addition, it does feel more like a native mobile application. It's basically a hybrid between web and the mobile applications. So it can be accessed directly from web, and it can also be installed on device. How wonderful is it, right? So PWA can operate in background and offline, and it can be installed from App Store and directly from the web. It sounds like a very nice solution for cross-platform applications, right? So on the positive side, right, it actually responsible for multiple screens. You can install it as well. It works offline, and it's probably quite friendly for index for your better ranking for your application. But it doesn't support iOS with version 11 below, and you don't have much control if people install your application from the web, and may feel less engaged for a native user, and because there's depends on where they install it. And again, as a web application on mobile, it does have limited hardware access from device. It sounds actually very, very nice, right? But it doesn't work as just a finger click. You do have to set up with some of the follow some steps, but those are quite straightforward. You have the full tutorial on how to create a progressive web application from Google. This is a very simple example. In terms of on a very high-level view again, we don't go into detail for this presentation. We need to create a manifest file and add the link of HTML to it. We create a register service worker, and this will be the one interact with your requests and app-like features. And this is a sample manifest file, as you can see here, but you will find the full detail of how to create a PWA from Google website if you are interested after this talk. So let's move on. Now we know we can build single-page web application or even try a PWA for mobile, for even better mobile friendly page. What does WebAssembly come in place? So WebAssembly is actually designed to be a portable compilation target for programming language on web, right? So you can execute at almost like a native speed, and it's safe to use in web environment. So WebAssembly is a way to build a single-page web application and progressive web application as well. But the goal here is not to replace existing web app, but to integrate with it and add a solution to support non-browser embeddings, right? So you can actually write type language and generate a module, which is WASM module. So by the way, WASM is a short name for WebAssembly, right? And you can then use this module as a library. So this definition might sound a bit complicated if you're not familiar with WebAssembly language, but I will go through more details later on, and we will see how we use it in Flutter. A bit more on the comparison for WebAssembly. It gives you more of a language diversity to web. So with WebAssembly, to build a web application, you have choices of language other than JavaScript. You can use, like, for example, Go, C, C++, and Flutter. And you can also use your current existing application, which is written in different language, and you can port it to web as a service, and it's secure by default. But it does have some disadvantage, like it doesn't fully support garbage collection, which we'll talk a bit more later in Flutter. It doesn't interact with DOM natively. And at the moment, not all language and the browsers are supported. So here are a few ways how you can use WebAssembly, right? This is outside the world of Flutter, but in general, how you can use WebAssembly for web application with a few examples as well. So you can write like Rust or Flutter or Go C application, and you target WASM as output. And you can read the steps as in more detail, which I'm not going to read it line by line at the moment. So you can write an application using other language and target WASM as output. This is probably one of the most popular way to use and interact with WASM. And how we use WASM in Flutter is actually option A. Or you can port C++ application as well with script. Or if you are very adventurous and I like to try things out, you can write the WASM directly at assembly level. And the other option here is to use this script called assembly script and compile this to WebAssembly binaries. Okay, so we talked about that. At the moment, we can use single page application or PWA to build web applications. And we can port a module, which is WebAssembly module on top of our existing JavaScript application. Now, how does Flutter support WebAssembly, right? Let's go into the world of Flutter now. Again, on high-level view, in case you are new to Flutter. So Flutter is a framework that compiles native code to support all platforms. Dart is a client-optimized language for any platform, not just Flutter, right? You can use for any other platform framework, but it's probably most popular now for to be used in Flutter framework. And WebAssembly, or WASM in short, it compiles other language to support web. So those are the definition for those three subjects. So how do we build Flutter web application before WASM, right? Traditionally, like before Flutter introduced WASM, we are able to build web in Flutter as well using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So we use Dart for application framework code and Flutter web engine. And then everything compiles into JavaScript. So you have this file called main.dart.js, and Dart has garbage collection function. Now, use WASM for Flutter. Again, we still use Dart for app framework and Flutter web engine, and JavaScript in C++. But the difference here is everything compiled into Dart WASM instead of Dart.js. And WASM has garbage collection functions now for few selective browsers. Again, if we compare Flutter and WASM a little bit, so Flutter is a framework that uses Dart, and it compiles into JavaScript, machine code, But the goal to use Flutter is it support multiple platforms: iOS, Android, web, and desktop like Mac, Windows, and Linux. So it's a one framework that you can use for multiple platforms. Wasm is actually allow you to use multiple language like C, Rust, Dart, Go, but it only support one platform, just web. So they are similar in a way because they open different possibility how you can build your application. But Flutter use one language, support multiple platforms. Wasm use multiple language, but support just one web platform. So now, I think back in January, Google announced the support of Wasm in Flutter. So before you can use, you can build Flutter, but before Google has officially support of Wasm in Flutter, you can still try to build, to use Wasm in Flutter as well, but not as native as of today. So option A is you can build entire module in other language and compile it into a Wasm module. And you can use this module in your Flutter application as a service, similar as what you do for web. So if you treat your Flutter application as a web application, as for today, you can actually use any of those language and compile them into a module and add into Flutter as a service. But now we have another option in Flutter with WebAssembly, option B. In Flutter, now you can convert Dart just directly into a Wasm and use the Dart to Wasm tool. And you can add, on the other direction, you can add Wasm support into existing Flutter web app projects. So everything now is compiled and transferred to Wasm instead. So how do we add this support to Flutter? Right, few steps here. You can build a Flutter web application and run Flutter web, build web Wasm. You will have output as you can see in the image on the other side. Now you have two options of browser, which is Chrome and Firefox. And after you've done that, right, you need to set the flags as well. After that, you open your browser to build the application. And this is actually running in Wasm instead of running in JavaScript for your web application. Now let's talk about a bit more detail of how we convert Dart to Wasm, right, in Flutter. So first, we need to install the Dart SDK and check out the repository. And here you have this Dart option that has in file, which is Dart, and the out file, which is Wasm file. And basically now it's all in one Wasm for Dart. So Dart to Wasm output a Wasm file. It contains all the assembly code in binary and MJS file containing the runtime. So what happens behind the scene, right? So Dart is a common shared front end between Dart compilers and the static analyze. And then the type flow analyze with abstract syntax tree optimize the tree shaking. Then a box and unbox representation of the value types like the int, double, and boolean. And with code gen of Wasm, you use information provided by the previous step from the type flow analyze. And in the end, a Wasm file is generated. It all sounds like very nice and it goes well so far, but here's some limitations and terms and conditions to use Wasm for Flutter. So to compile Dart and Flutter to Wasm, you need a browser that supports garbage collection. So before, all the browsers doesn't support garbage collection actually. So the team actually worked a lot with the Flutter team and the WebAssembly team worked a lot with the browser support engineering team to add the garbage collection function to support WebAssembly. And the garbage collection helps garbage collection language like Dart to execute more efficiently, because JavaScript doesn't need garbage collection. And to support WASM, Dart shifts how it targets browser and the JavaScript API. And because of this, it prevents Dart code that use, for example, Dart HTML or package.js from compiling to WASM. So to check if you have, like, for example, to check if a WASM build failed due to this API, like if you have existing Flutter web application and you want to compile everything to WASM instead, to check if you have those packages that at the moment is not supported, right? You just simply run the command I was mentioning earlier. And if you do notice those error message as you see in the screen below, that means your web application contains those packages at the moment are not supported by WASM. So few workaround here, right? In terms of browser, at the moment you can use Firefox and any Chrome-based browser, not just Chrome, any Chrome-based browsers. So for example, Safari is not supported at the moment. Just keep watch updates from the Dart and the Flutter team. They promised to give some announcement by end of this year, maybe in November, maybe in December, to give more information on the latest update of WebAssembly. And so in terms of package and platform-specific packages, right, you at the moment you have to avoid using those API. And again, right, we expect them to announce and make updates about those APIs in later of this year. In terms of the dev support, so you can use master channel in Flutter. It does support WASM now. And we just keep watch the latest improvements for WASM support, right? It will come. So if you are interested to see how a WASM web page looks like in real, you can scan the QR code or just go to the link as you see in the screen below. This is not a page I made myself. This is provided by the team, the Flutter team. Feel free to have a look, inspect, and see how this web page looks like. It's actually very fast, and it does work really, really well in WASM. So now we talked about a bit about web application and Flutter, how Flutter supports building a web application using WASM. So now you see the possibility of using Flutter for different ways, right? But hold on, we can also build a desktop application using Flutter as well. So the next 10-15 minutes, I will talk about Flutter for desktop, how we build it, and how we ship it in 3 platforms for desktop: Mac, Windows, and Linux. A bit of background for desktop application. So back in 2019, the desktop in Flutter was first mentioned. And a year later, Mac OS and Linux Alpha is released. And a year later, they added support for Windows. And the support for Windows then goes live. So in 2022, last year, Mac OS Linux stable version is also released. A bit of comparison before we dive in. So those two, like Flutter and React Native, is probably the most popular cross-platform framework, right? So in terms of using Flutter, it does support all the platforms, as you can see, right? Android, iOS, and the web, Windows, right? Mac OS and Linux. Also, actually, I've been watching the updates yesterday, which I have added into my slides. Now Flutter actually announced a support for embedded device as well. It does support the embedded device naturally, but now it has more support now for embedded device, which is quite awesome. So you're adding more to the Flutter world. Then React Native, it does support Android and iOS nicely as well. But at the same time, the web support is actually there, the function is there, but it's provided by community. The support for Windows and the Mac OS is provided by the partner of the Windows and the Mac OS. And it doesn't support Linux at the moment. So how do we set up a new project in Flutter for desktop, right? So we have the Flutter SDK. We add it to your path as usual how you use Flutter. Here with some extra you need to install, right? If you are a Mac user, you need to have Xcode. If you are a Linux user, you need to have Android Studio IDE. And if you are a Windows user, you need to have Android Studio or IntelliJ. And in addition, you need to install VS Code, right? Let's see like how we built a Hello World application, right? So once you've done all that, like install all this software that you need, create an application, for example, my application, and you run, right? You run, just add this, right? -d, either in Mac OS or Linux or Windows, right? Don't add everything together, just choose one. And you should see your desktop application is loaded naturally, right, on your machine. Those are examples you can see in different environment, Mac and Linux and Windows. Right, let's talk a bit more about Linux project system, because this might not be so familiar for most of us, right? And the file system looks a bit different. It contains more files, right? Because so here, Linux use C++. The CLAN is a tool infrastructure for the C family. So in your Flutter application under the folder of Linux, you will see those files, right? They will be generated for you. And you have some cross-platform tool for build, test, and packaging, and your elements and binding as well. So you have the Ninja for your build system, and you have some files for compression and decompression. So you will see those files in your Flutter project, and this is what they do right behind the scene. Right, instead of creating a new project for desktop in Flutter, if you have existing application already, you can add the support of desktop into your existing project by running this command. And you should see those three folders were added in your existing Flutter project. But those are just basic, right, configurations. You need to add a bit more to have your application running in desktop. And the reason is, right, so when we work in a browser, right, web, and in a mobile phone, few things works quite different from comparing to our desktop application, the mouse, the keyboard, and the navigation. So here again, on high level, Flutter does provide you functions of how you can use keyboard, right? But imagine in the desktop app, you would use mouse or keyboard, right, as a shortcuts instead of click and move your screen. So if you are building a Flutter for desktop, you need to think about the keyboard and the navigation. This is a bit different from mobile application. But Flutter has this already included in their library. You can actually interact with keys here. So you have this, say, focus, right? You can ask if the key is escape, if the key is a key K, and you can add your implementation of each key here for your application. And you can actually group them together into a focusable action detector. Once you group them together, you can create your shortcuts of if user press 2 or 3 key together, what kind of action you want to give to those combination of keys, right? Like, it's very useful for when you're playing games. So the mouse input, right? Again, there's gesture detector as well. That works for both mouse and the touch. So in terms of the framework, The mouse input is similar as how you detect a gesture here. So you have basically everything ready, right, for you to use in a framework. Now, once we have our application built, right, in Flutter for desktop, how can we distribute them on desktop? So for Mac OS, here are the steps, but I'm not going to read line by line. You can actually register the app on App Store, right? Create your application, have the code assigned, and then just distribute it as usual. So this step is very similar to how you distribute your iOS application. In terms of Windows, there are two ways you can distribute it, right? One is you have this file, right, executable file, and with this file, you can distribute it anywhere, right, for Windows machine, or you can distribute it to the Microsoft Store. This App Store does manage the application lifecycle for you. It does engage more for your user. Again, every time I want to update, you have to go through the security of the Microsoft Store, but it does feel more engaging for your user, and it's actually more secure. In terms of Linux, right, you need to install the Stepcraft, right, follow the steps, and install the multipass. And at the third step, you install the Flutter application, and you can build and publish your application to the Linux environment. So they actually are quite straightforward, and if you are interested, I do encourage you to try out. So if you want to give it a try, there are lots of, not lots, but there are a few actually established, well-made desktop application as for today. Here is just one example. You can try this Rev app. They have the desktop application built in Flutter, right? And it works actually very, very nicely, very smooth. But basically, it doesn't feel like it's built with a cross-platform language. It's almost as good as any native applications. So in addition, right, this multi-window support at the moment is not available, but back in January, in Flutter Forward event in Kenya, the Google team announced this will be a very nice and upcoming feature to support multi-screen, multi-windows, right? What it means, now in the future, Flutter does support multi-windows. So you can have your application running in desktop, but on multiple windows. And here is an example. This feature is not available yet as for us to try. So I got this example from their talk. So you can actually have different windows for application, and you have ways to control how each window works. Either they synchronize with either the data is synchronized, or the action is actually not synchronized. You have ways to code this logic in your application. So at the moment, this is a prototype, but let's wait for the announcement, right? So now, as I was saying, each window can work independently, or you can share data in between, which is like super awesome. So in terms of desktop, here are some of my thoughts, right? It does work nicely, but we could have some support for a virtual desktop environment. And this is because when we build application for web and for mobile, we have a virtual environment to use, right, to test on. So to test on iOS, Android, and different browsers, right? But to build a desktop application, like if I have just a Mac OS machine, I don't have Windows, I don't have Linux, it's actually very difficult for me to develop applications for different machines. I need to have at least 3 machines, right, to test my application on desktop. So I'm hoping, right, there will be some support for virtual development environment, for like emulator or testing tools, right, for desktop development as well. And if we don't have a virtual test environment, maybe from the GCP family, like the Google Cloud Platform, there can be some pre-made Flutter virtual machine in some of their tools, right? We can just download and use as a virtual desktop environment for Flutter, which has few things installed already. So it will be very quick and efficient for us to build desktop applications. And hopefully there will be some more documentation around desktop and how things work behind the scene. And maybe eventually someone will design and create, maybe you, right, a universal design system for Flutter, including desktop. So design system now is very popular for mobile and for web. How about we build a universal design system that works for desktop as well? Because each desktop environment has its own design system, similar as Material and Cupertino, right, for iOS. So this is the end of my presentation. We talked about Flutter today, but not just for mobile. We talked about Flutter for web, using the tool of WebAssembly, and we talked about how we build Flutter for desktop. So if you have any questions, right, do ask either in now, right, by typing it, or you can connect to me, right, on my Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can ask me questions or share more information. And thank you.
Dear Teresa, thank you so much. I know you have another meeting after a few minutes, and we have at least 5 questions from the folks and a lot of like heart smiles, etc., supporting. Do you have like 5 more minutes, or you should go after 5?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, go for it.
So,
happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I'll just shoot the messages. So Azim asked about project planning. This I'm not sure the context.
Yes. Would you be able to provide more context, like project planning? So in terms of work in real environment, right? So there were 2 types of projects, right? In a high level view, one is your personal project and one is enterprise level project. For your personal project, for myself, I just build and go, right? Type anything I want. Not much planning I'm doing for myself, apart from doing think about the design of the project, right? This architecture of the code. But in terms of project planning in enterprise project, if you are I don't know which level of you are. If you are students, right? Maybe you haven't worked in a project before. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing. So in enterprise level, in your team, you don't actually work alone. You have a project management team, product design team, and UI UX team, testing team, and the software team. So usually project planning is happening on top level from the project management. And again, if we are using Agile, this project, once it's actually designed and planned for the entire project, right, by the project team, it comes to development team. We will do our own project planning, but on a smaller scale. So how we can ship and deliver this piece of a feature in, for example, 1 week or 2 weeks cadence, followed by the Agile methodology. We will do planning and run few Agile ceremonies, right? The planning, the retro, and by end of these 2 weeks, we will then ship this feature to our end user. I hope that answers your question.
It's actually a very detailed answer. Thank you so much. Moving on, we have 3. Actually, I also had my question, but I will maybe ask them next time because we have a lot. Yernur asked, what do you think was the future of Flutter development will it shift into web-based apps?
So the future of Flutter development is now. So I started to use Flutter back in 2018. Then Flutter was actually officially released in 2018 in London. And at the time, I was asking, like, again, questions for seniors. What is the future of Flutter? I think we are in the future of Flutter, in my opinion. Like, as for today, as cross-platform framework, Flutter does support as many platforms as we could possibly think of: mobile, web, and even web with web assembly, desktop, and embedded. So I think the future is bright. Definitely worth to learn this language. But again, I always, when I do mentoring meetings, right, I will say learn this language, but don't just focus on a framework only, right? Do expand your skills as following the T-shaped engineering or pie-shaped engineering side. But the future of Flutter is definitely very, very bright. The community is great. The Google team is very supportive. And these are other elements I do think of when I choose a framework. Not just the framework on its own, but how big the community is, how supportive this development group is. And again, it's open source. You can also contribute to the framework as well. And will Flutter shift into web-based application? It does support web-based application. I don't think it will be solely supporting it. It will support multi-platform, including web. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. It's also detailed answer. Thank you so much. Well, I'll just skip this. We love Flutter. Thank you, Aslan. And thank you, people sending smiles. And there was a question, I think partially you answered, where now Flutter is used. Provide some cases, please. Well, I don't know. Even I can say it's everywhere. Fintech, banking.
So a lot of places, right? It's actually very popular in different industries. For gaming app, there's a Flame. You can like for like very, very nice animations, right? For mobile application, for game, for banking application, lots of banks nowadays use Flutter. It's very secure, and it's not as popular as Flutter for mobile, right? Flutter for web and for desktop, as for today, is not so popular, especially for desktop, because of the limitations on few tech issues, right? And also building desktop applications is very different from building web and mobile applications. So Flutter is now used mostly for mobile applications, and you can use the Flutter for web using JavaScript. But again, you have now additional support for WebAssembly. Some cases, I don't actually recall anything from top of my head, but if you go to this link, I think like Flutter app application use case, there's a page, definitely there's a web page, at least all these applications that use Flutter.
Thank you so much. And also, last question, probably, given your time limit, and it's early morning in London. The PowerPoints or PDF, I'm not sure if it's possible to share. I can upload it to the this YouTube video description.
Yeah, we can talk about this afterwards. Yeah, but this video will be published as well, so feel free to watch it, right? And we can talk about how is the content. How do you optimize WebAssembly code for performance and efficiency? So, okay, this is like a good question. And so to use WebAssembly in Flutter or in general, right, for web, it does take a bit more time to load it in the beginning because it works very differently from JavaScript, right? You compile it and you don't need to load something into your browser initially, so it does feel a bit slow in the first 10 seconds. But once you have everything installed and have everything downloaded, you can work this. Your application can actually work a bit offline as well. And this goes back to the slides of how we actually do the tree shaking and how we optimize the code using the box and unbox representation, right? This code is, because using WebAssembly, this actually is compiled. So it says it work as almost like a native speed, but I do hear on the side, right, that someone was saying it actually work a bit more faster and more efficient comparing to JavaScript. But again, this is because it's a new technology, not WebAssembly, but WebAssembly for Flutter. So we will definitely have more information coming up end of this year or maybe next year.
Thank you so much, dear Teresa. We will now, I think, have to let you go towards, it's just the beginning of the week, and we wish you a great day ahead, and we'll keep connected with your social media accounts. Thank you so much. If people will demand, I will try to ask you to speak again someday this year, and we see a lot of positive comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great time for the events and enjoying your development and the coding, everyone. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.